Hi everyone. Today's session is on how to use Google safely. So what we're trying to cover in this presentation is to inform you on the ways your data is at risk while using Google or can be at risk, provide tools to help navigate Google safely, and show you some settings that you can adjust to make your browsing experience a bit more secure. So some risks when using Google are first, data leaks. So Google collects a lot of your data, and though Google is really good at protecting itself from data leaks and attacks, there is a risk of some data being leaked, although it's usually pretty small. And the best way to keep yourself safe from this is to be aware and to try to avoid storing sensitive information directly on your Google account so that if there is a leak, you're not exposed as much. Another risk is cookies. Now, sadly, although this picture does look delicious, cookies when using Google have nothing to do with the food that you might eat. Cookies actually refer to files that websites store locally on what's called your cache in your browser, and they use that usually to help improve your browsing experience, but there have been some security concerns recently with Google using cookies. There's also the possibility of Google tracking you. Now, Google does use some analytic tools to determine patterns in your internet use, and this is primarily to help you get better results each time you search with Google, but it also does help people in the marketing business target you better with their ads, so you're more likely to buy their products. There's also Gmail, which is Google's email service. Now, your emails may be tracked to improve relevance and targeting of ads again, and it is also used to help block some spam emails. Now, this isn't read by any human being, so it's not like someone in California is going to know what is being sent, but computers may be analyzing not the whole email, but some key portions. And although computers are the only ones that see it, this information is still being tracked. There's also Google Chrome, which you may have heard of. It's Google's web browser, which is different from a search engine. Now, all Google products, like Gmail and Google, uh, are best used on the Chrome browser, but there have been a lot of security concerns about using the Chrome browser. So some people have recommended switching to some other more secure browsers like Firefox or Microsoft Edge. There's also Chrome's Incognito mode, which is basically a more private way of browsing the web, but websites are still able to do the same thing of tracking how you use their websites, which often does come with the good intent of just making your experience better, but sometimes it can be used for malicious purposes. So basically, in summary, Google does collect some information about you, and it uses this primarily for advertising and also to help make your browsing experience more smooth, but there are some security concerns. Now, it doesn't mean you shouldn't use Google, but it does mean that you should be conscious of Google's practices. And when you're using it, just remember to stay safe. And we're going to cover some tips on how to do that. So the first tip is called Safe Search. Now, Safe Search is something Google has developed that allows you to filter out explicit content when you're browsing. And this applies for videos, images, and websites, along with anything else you might be browsing on Google. Another way is to not save passwords on your Chrome browser. It's recommended to use a password manager. I think we've had a webinar on that in the past, but make sure not to store them locally because, again, Chrome isn't the most secure web browser out there. And if it is hacked, someone could very easily access lots of your logins, which is bad because then they can access, say, websites that might have other sensitive information stored, and you don't want that. Now, what you can do is use a passphrase to protect your saved Google data. Now, a passphrase is like a password in the sense that if you want to access your Google account on a new device, you'll have to enter it just as an extra layer of security. Another way to keep yourself safe is to disable sync. Now, sync here is short for synchronization, which basically means if, say, you've made a bookmark and you saved a website for later, and then you go on another computer and log in with your Google account, that bookmark won't show up on the other device unless you've enabled sync. Um, and so this prevents your data being collected across devices better. And you can also do it on mobile devices. Another way is to just not sign into Google at all. But this does come with the problem of you not being able to use various Google products like Gmail. And your search relevancy, which basically means how good the websites are at giving you the information you need, won't be as good because Google has a harder time analyzing what you're searching for across multiple days. You can also turn off your web history, which basically is all the websites you visited in the past. And this creates basically a personalized search profile for you. And by deleting this, it means that you won't face as many targeted ads, and you also can remove anything Google has stored from you. You can also choose to opt out of interest-based ad serving, which I will cover in the live demo. You can remove these interests by visiting your ad preference page in your Google account settings. You can also use Google's privacy checkup feature, which lets you know what information you're sharing with Google and if there are any security concerns in your Google account. Finally, you can just clear your browser data. This protects you from data risk because then you don't have any information stored. So if your device does get hacked, as long as you do this frequently, there's a very low risk that your personal information will be leaked. And you could also just not use Google entirely. There are some alternative search engines like DuckDuckGo or Ecosia, and some other web browsers like Firefox, Microsoft Edge, Safari, or Brave. There are also lots of other email services that you can use instead of Gmail. And basically, if you mix up which services you use instead of relying on one company, it's harder for any one of those companies to gather lots of data on you and use that. So we have a bunch of links here in this presentation that give you some instructions on how to use or do various security tips. Now I'll just be conducting a brief live demo on how to implement some of these security tips. So here, as hopefully you can see, this is an example Chrome profile. Now, first, I'll just be covering how to disable sync on your device. So up here in the top right corner, you can see 3 dots stacked on top of each other. Now, if you click that and go all the way down to the third setting from the bottom, it's labeled settings. And if you click that, you'll be taken to a screen that looks something like this. Now, currently, this profile has sync enabled, so any information that I might store on this device, like bookmarks, if I logged in with the same account on another device, it would also show up. Now, turning it off is really easy. On the right, you can see a button labeled Turn Off. Just click that, and then it'll say double check. And you also have an option at the bottom to clear bookmarks, history, and passwords from this device. So I'm just going to press turn off for now. And it also does sign you out. About that. I'm back. As mentioned in the presentation, you're also able to set up a passphrase. So to do that, on the main screen of the settings page in Google, you can go to this first option here labeled Sync and Google Services. And if you click that, you'll see a bunch of different options. And this option over here labeled Encryption Options down under Sync. If you click that, you'll see two options. By default, this option encrypt synced passwords with your Google account is picked, but you can also encrypt synced data with your own passphrase. So if you click this, you'll see this appear, and this basically asks you to set up a password that you'll have to enter every time you log in on a new device with a Google account. So you would type in your example passphrase and then type it in again, and then you go down here, this would turn blue and you'd press save. Now, if I go back, some other options are, if you go here, the second option here that says manage your Google account, you'll see this little box with an arrow in it. And if you click that, you'll be taken to the screen. Now over here, you can see you have some security recommendations. Now Google will alert you if there's some security issues that is detected, and you can click protect your account. Now over here, you can see sometimes if you've logged into a device and you haven't used it in a really long time, Google will recommend that you sign out on that device. And if you press remove, it'll do that for you automatically. So you won't have to go to that device again. There's also recent security activity. So if you signed in on another device, it'll show up here as long as it's been in the past 28 days. And if you see a device that's been signed in and you don't recognize it, you can click see unfamiliar activity and you'll be able to change your password and you'll be logged out of all other devices. You can also go to sign in and recovery, which if say you've forgotten your password, then they can send an email to a different email address with some information that will be encrypted. And they can also send you a phone number, and you can have some trusted devices that you think will be secure. And those devices will get notifications that will help you log back into your account. You can always remove these as well. Now, third-party access. This means this basically means any application that isn't Google that has access to your account. So here we have an example of Journ, and it has access to this account's Google Drive. Now, if you don't trust this thing or you're not sure what it is, you can always click remove access. Now, if I go back to the Google account, just by clicking the top right, you can also see there are some privacy suggestions. So if I click here, I'll be able to review some privacy suggestions. Right here, you can see I can automatically delete my YouTube history, and I can make a plan for my account. Now, if I go back to the Google account again and go to personal info, here I can see all the different information Google has stored. So my name, or this account's name, birthday, gender, email address, and phone. You can choose what Google sees about you, and you can see some other info like languages and some accessibility options, which you might want if you're having trouble, say, seeing the screen properly. Now, finally, if you want to clear your browsing history, you'll again have to go to the top right and click the three dots. This time, you can go to history, which is the fourth option, and click, and you'll see this little pop-up menu and press history. You'll be taken to this screen, and this shows you some different windows that you've opened. And to clear it, you can click clear browsing data over here on the left. And by clicking that, you'll see in basic, you can see your browsing history and also cookies and some cached images and files. So things that websites have stored on your computer. And if you're more on the tech side, you can go into advanced and see some other options. And there's also Chrome's Incognito mode, which again, you can go to the top right with the three dots, and you can go click New Incognito Window, and you'll see something like this. So Google won't save information on your device. And that concludes the presentation on how to use Google safely.